What you're about to see is a few minutes of Filmation's new family feature, The Legend of Bravestar. It's a high-tech western of the future set on a strange and marvelous frontier planet where humans and aliens have come to find riches and remain to fight an awesome spirit of evil. In a distant time and faraway place, the planet of New Texas floats deep in space. Sky of 3 suns, land of precious ore. The carrier rush brought outlaws by the score. And one day a lawman appeared with powers of hawk, wolf, puma, and bear. Protector of peace, mystic man from afar. Champion of justice, Marshal Bravestar. Bravestar.
Eyes of the hawk, ears of the wolf. Bravestar.
Bravestar.
Strength of the bear, speed of the puma. Bravestar.
Bravestar. The Legend of Bravestar is Filmation's exciting story of a mysterious youngster who acquires astounding powers to become a fabled lawman of the future.
Has come. The evil force lies in wait on the planet of New Texas. Below, it wants to destroy us, as it did our people. Though I have taught you much, you are not yet ready to face this evil. For now, I must face it alone. In a few moments, this ship will crash on the planet below. Even with all my magic, I may not survive. But you shall, child. You and the powers of your destiny. There is a galactic Marshal space station within range of your emergency capsule. I have ensured that they shall find and care for you. If the fates permit, we will meet again. And should that come to pass, you will know me by this. Farewell. Now do your worst. You think you have brought me to destruction, and so you may. But I shall surround this ship with walls of stone And if I survive this crash, be warned, evil one! Your rule of terror shall be no more! Do you hear me, Stampede? I live!
Later, Bravestar's mystic powers enable him to save the planet of New Texas from the forces of evil, led by the infamous outlaw, Tex Hex.
Town's wide open now that dang marshal and judge are gone. You varmints ready to ride? Sure am! Let's party! Move out, man!
We're being attacked! Outside! Everybody, move!
Destroy everything!
I got my work cut out for me.
For us, you mean?
Now, wait a minute.
You don't have time to argue, Bravestar. Besides, I'm the judge. Let's go.
Is it over?
Hasn't even begun yet, Mayor.
You speak truthfully, brave star. I must warn you, there is more evil on this planet than you know. Even now, Tex Hex prepares to gather great forces of evil to help him in his vengeance. He will attack tomorrow. You must make ready.
Now, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. This town is gonna be a lot different when we get done with it. Let's get to it.
Brave star, brave star.
The show that I think that was the most novel and the one that I enjoyed as much as I did any other show that we ever did was a syndicated show called Brave Star. It was a Native American in outer space in the future. It was cowboys and Indians with rocket ships. We had a wonderful hero and an incredible bad guy, because after Skeletor, you can't, well, I mean, how are you going to find a bad guy that's worse than Skeletor? Tex Hex was that bad guy. I wanted to do a science fiction show. I really like science fiction. To me, it was my form of relaxation. I read a lot of science fiction. I wanted to create, when I say I, when I say I, it's we. It's a studio full of people, writers, guys who really do the work. What I do is I represent them. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I really didn't get a chance to talk about, it's because one of the things I did right, and I did well, was allowed talented people to express themselves and to feel like they were part of the whole operation. I was honest with all the people. I told them what we were getting. I told them how much we could afford to pay for these things, and I told them what we could do with these things for the future to try to build a studio that could keep all of us employed and all of us working at a craft that should be preserved. We did a show that allowed us to do something worthwhile within the context of the show. It had the same educational foundation that we try to put in all of our shows. It had, I thought, the ability to appeal to an adult audience as well, and it went out and did not do as well because it got poor time slots. It was the last large number of shows that we ever did. It was 65 half hours, and in those days, it was a lot of money. I mean, to raise, and it was difficult. It was $18 million worth of work on that thing, and it's lying there for the first time being shown through DVD again, and I think that
I got my start at Filmation by auditioning for the show, the original Ghostbusters. And all of us in town, all the voiceover people knew it was a sweet deal because Lou Scheimer had the reputation of not picking at you so you wouldn't heal. He let you have some head and gave you time to, get out there and trot out your characters. And it was just a more creative atmosphere. They didn't have guests come in those days, and so we knew we would be up to doing 3 characters at least per show. So it was, I was fortunate to get that. And then I became part of the repertory company at Filmation, which was a wonderful ride for about 4 years. Lou Scheimer had an unusual way of casting. He didn't. Here's what he'd do. He'd have you come into your office. This is after you got to know him and you got in there. He had his own little repertory company. And he'd have a cup of coffee, and he'd make sure that you had a cup of coffee. And then he'd lay out the designs of all the characters, a model sheet. So you maybe have 15, 20 characters that would reoccur, and it'd be on the table. You'd be with the other actors, and he'd go, "Okay, Pat, what are you going to play this year?" And I'd go, "Well, I kind of, what's this one?" "Oh, that's a character, it's skinny." "Okay. Well, I could do something like this, maybe like that, right?" He goes, "Well, what else? Because you got to have 3 or 4 or 5. Come on." And so then I'd go, "Well, I think if this big, heavy guy I could separate." Because we're thinking we got to separate these. We're always thinking, oh, we could have dialogue with ourselves. They got to separate. That's the term in animation for sounding different. So I'd go, "Well, we get a character heavier like that. Well, then maybe there'd be something nasal I could do." And, so you'd just go shopping. And at that time, you'd get a series there, and it was about 75, 85 grand. And so here you are in this opportunity, in this wonderful man's office going, they're going to pay me $85,000 and I get to choose my roles? Okay. One of the most interesting roles I had was Brave Star. Now, before this, I'd started to get a reputation of doing, character voices. I'd do the villains on things. I did the Ghostbuster. Wait a minute now. So I do all sorts of, interesting ducks, dogs, and villains, but I was never a leading man. Well, here I was given the opportunity to be a leading man in a character voice or in a cartoon series. And I didn't have the equipment. I was still a little bit green and like a tenor, so I had to go down as low as I could. And I remember that Lou told me, "Look, we don't want any big butch guy here. We want to have a kind of a gentle hero." So I thought, well, I'll try to do him like he's a hero, but he eats quiche. So I got and I remember telling myself, "Pat, keep low." So that's where I got this, and just did a slight Texas accent, and that was Brave Star. So of all the wonderful, joyful performances and series we did, that sticks out in my mind because it was such an opportunity. After the success of He-Man, when Filmation opened up the market of 65-episode buys, we would go into Filmation and record 2 shows a day on Tuesdays and 2 shows on Thursdays. And we would receive the scripts in advance, which wasn't part of our union ruling at that time. They just were smart and they wanted us prepared so we can go in there and get the work done. So many of these scripts didn't have all the details of action. And so we sometimes had to guess at what was going on. Erica, our director, would go, no, you're not falling off a horse, you're falling off a cliff. Okay, let's do that again. But all the actors are really on their chops when they came in, and we could whistle. In fact, it was like recording a radio play. Sometimes we'd have 2, 3-page rolls, which is really unheard of. But it was a joy to be able to do it that way. And with a 65 episode buy, you could really get to know the cast well, know where they were taking you, and wonderful ensemble opportunities for that. 65 episodes next to Charlie Adler, 65 episodes next to Frank Welker, who's a real superstar in character voice. And one of my fondest memories is waiting for Frank to be in the middle of a take and then grabbing his knee and squeezing it, because he's one of the most ticklish guys I've ever known in my life, and seeing if he could get through the take while I did that, because the director couldn't see, Erica couldn't see this going on, so I'd just be sitting there like that, starting to squeeze. So that was always a fond memory. Something interesting about Filmation is they did not rely on vocal effects or post-processing of the voice. For example, when I did Thunderstick in Brave Star, I played a mechanical hick and he sort of talked like this, right? So it was up to me to create that kind of mechanical sound. I know that Alan Oppenheimer, who did a lot of huge, full-blown villains, all I did is slap reverb or echo on him. So it was up to us. In the original Ghostbusters, I played a car. Now, wait a minute. Are you gonna? And I'd go through my script and mark those places where I could, if I had an S, so I could go like a radiator steam. Also with starting. Now, what are you gonna do here? So I'd mark my script for those effects, and it was pretty much up to us. At Filmation, they didn't have guests. So what happened is the entire cast did every single character that was on the screen. Even Erica and Lou would come in like cobbler's elves at midnight and all of a sudden magically come up with the extra characters. And so we really got a workout. Now when we recorded these, we always did them in order. We never would, for example, if I had a scene with myself as Brave Star and Thunderstick, you're gonna get it now. And who's telling me what to do? Well, I'll tell you. You know, we had to go back and forth with it. So, hey, how you doing? I'm doing pretty good. What's he talking about? Well, I was talking about whether you guys got together. Well, I didn't know about that. So we had to go one after another. Now, sometimes we'd take a pause between those lines, but we never went in, as some production companies do, and do one character, and then go do the next character and the third. At Filmation, because we did so many characters and they would reoccur in the 65 episodes, it became a bit of a problem to remember a character you'd done in episode 4 and now you're at episode 36. So here's what Erica Scheimer would do. We had reference cassettes.
We use cassettes then. You know what cassettes are, don't you?
So she'd slap in a cassette of something we'd done before and we could work it up. And that was most helpful. As far as the reoccurring characters we did in every episode, not a problem. I mean, you know, they were just, you just have them contained. It's interestingly enough, you don't remember the character by the sound, it's the feel. You know, if you're doing a character like that, it's not so much me hearing it, but feeling that tension. And then when I feel it, and then I have my lips in a certain way to do that heck accent, that's what reminds me of it. So it's more kinetic than oral. Here's something unique about Filmation. Unlike any of the other production houses in Hollywood, even in the 80s, you could go from floor to floor in the Filmation building and you could see the project you were working on in the various stages of completion. It was a phenomenal opportunity. You could go up and see storyboard, you could go to the next floor, you could see them actually painting cells. It was great. And so at any given time you could really go shopping there and see, where were we at? What's that going to look like? Who's doing the layouts? Terrific. He'll tell us that he was frugal, but he was trying to do something nobody else was doing. He was keeping all these people employed in America doing American animation. So we always worked with him. And the good news is that he allowed us to be more creative than most other production companies. He really gave us the opportunity to try out different things. I mean, the idea of doing this kind of voice for Thunderstick, that came from my stepmother who had a slight polio. And so when she spoke, she had to create mechanically this sound. Well, I brought that to the table, said I'll lower the voice, make a hick out of it. Not very many production companies would go, yeah, go ahead, give it a shot. And so it was a wonderfully creative place to work. And not just for the voice talent. This went all the way through all the directors, everybody. They had more room to move. Not a lot of dough, but a lot of room to move. Here's my fondest memory of working with Filmation. Erica Schreimer used to have to, you know, keep us, we were, you know, it was chaos, and she would contain it, although not dampen our spirits, because that's what animation recording session's all about. Wild and woolly, ad-libs, lines that don't fit in, retake them, but we were amused. But she would keep us contained. But then once in a while she'd have to get a little taciturn with us. So at one point, I remember one show, she said, okay, knock it off, you know, let's get back to work. And she used to have a rolling chair that she used. And so just after she announces that we have to get ready, she leans back with a little bit of pride. She was a young gal then. And she went way up in the air, over backwards, and she was such a good sport that she laid there for a while and kicked her legs up just to amuse the other children. Nice memory. I'm surprised and delighted at how many people remember my work in the 80s. I try to give them as many interviews as possible, email interviews, and be as responsive as I can. And it's always a pleasure for a performer to know that there's an audience out there. That's why I got into it, and so it's a pleasure to hear from fans, to know that I delighted them when they were sitting Indian style in front of the TV at 6 years old. I think my job goes along with, cereal. They were eating cereal and listening and watching me. I got to tell you, in 30 years of doing animation, I've never been harassed or bothered by a fan. I've had some more adamant than others about getting an autograph, but hey, that's great. I'm a teacher. I'm looking for motivated people. So giving out an autograph or sending one back in the mail, never a problem. I was a classically trained actor. I got a Master of Fine Arts in Professional Acting at Cornell University. Then I emigrated to Australia to start doing Shakespeare. It turned out I wasn't so good at it, but at the same time, they wanted somebody to do a voice in a commercial. I turned out really good at that. And so I'm a failed Shakespearean actor that bumped into a flourishing, wonderful 30-year career. And I suppose one of the real joys of doing character voice acting is I've been able to babies and ducks and dogs. I'll tell you what, I'll do my baby for you. I don't know if this will rustle the microphone. Let me know if I rustle it. Is that okay? Okay. Huh? Jewish baby? Italian baby? Now, where else can you pay a mortgage? I've done about 4,000 shows in my career, and I've got to say that it was the most pleasant time of my career working for Filmation. Lou Scheimer, Erica, the people there, the other players. It just was a golden era for a young actor, and I'll always be grateful to the Scheimers for giving me my career. I mean, where else did they teach you to do that goofy stuff, right? You can't get that at Cornell University. And I was given the opportunity to learn as a young man and had faith put into me and trusts that I would deliver the goods, and I tried to, and I'll always be grateful and have a wonderful, wonderful memory of that time.
In a distant time and faraway place, the planet of New Texas floats deep in space. Sky of 3 suns, land of precious ore. The carrion rush brought outlaws by the score. And one day a lawman appeared, with powers of hawk, wolf, puma, and bear. Protector of peace, mystic man from afar. Champion of justice, martial brave star. Brave star.
Eyes of the hawk, ears of the bull. Brave star.
Brave star.
Brains of the bear, feet of the puma. Brave star.
Brave star.
Brave star. Brave star.
I directed a number of the episodes, and I did some early animation on 3030. I did the run cycles and some of the more broader animation of, broader meaning the more exaggerated animation of 3030, because he was like a sort of a very dynamic, sort of extroverted character, and you could do a lot more with his face than, say, the more realistic characters. So I did a lot of physical action of 3030 doing things.
Brave
There was one old animator in the 50s who said we all animate ourselves. So and it's true. It's like we all put ourselves into the performances, whatever they are. And yeah, I always kind of enjoyed him because he was so over the top. You know, like he wouldn't just enter a room. He'd like blow the door off. You know, or he wouldn't just tap somebody on the shoulder. He'd put his fist through the wall and grab you and pull you through. And that was kind of fun. To have a character that's so out there and everything was enjoyable. I think my favorite story was the one where Tex Hex falls in love with the blind girl. And I thought that was an interesting story because I like stories where you take the villain and you turn him a little bit and kind of reveal a more human side. You know, we did a little bit on that on Skeletor on Evil Seed in the first season He-Man, where we saw a side of Skeletor that wasn't just, you know, the straight villain story. We saw a little different, and with Tex Hex we kind of saw that behind it all, like he was a human being once, and he was capable of feelings, and having a character like the blind girl who didn't prejudge him from who he was, but just took him, just saw his soul rather than seeing his physical presence, was kind of a nice turn for the plot to go, and that was an enjoyable story. I'm very flattered and grateful that the fans have had have gotten so much enjoyment out of these characters, and it's kind of funny because in the mid-'80s there was an episode of, I think, Moonlighting or something, where Bruce Willis was singing the theme from Top Cat. And the next day we were all sitting around at work trying to remember the lyrics from Top Cat because that was my childhood, or like our childhood, where we remembered. And at one point we said, you know, we're probably making memories for children right now. And the idea to us seemed kind of silly. We were like, oh yeah, you know. But we really were, and we really did. And I'm glad that the memories are a positive one, and the images are images that kids got a chance to have fun with.
Every year I go back to where I grew up in Detroit for a fishing trip with old friends. And in about 1985-86, I went back from my fishing trip in the fall, came back to work after a week to be called up to the production head's office. And I thought, well, I'm in trouble now. I don't know what I did, but I did something, and that wasn't unexpected. And I got there and they said, well, you're going to direct the Brave Star feature. And I was really surprised because I don't think I was even fully aware that there was a Brave Star feature in the offing. I'd seen some of the development, thought it was pretty cool, but you know, I just never really thought about it. And all of a sudden I was directing this feature film, and so I was thrilled by it, and dove in, started looking at all kinds of westerns, all my classic films. I was trying to figure a way to make it for the budget they had and make it look like far more than this budget, something I call geometric filmmaking. If something costs a dime, make it look like it costs $1. Don't just double how it looks, make it like 10 times better, and just figure out how to do it with different aspects. So it was a really great challenge, and I really appreciated getting the chance. The visual look of Brave Star was pretty much set by the time I came on board. as far as what the character looked like, as far as what the story, the script had been done already. And so my job became to direct it and try to direct it very well. But they were also open to me changing things, adding things, trying to figure out how to make it more cinematic. To get me involved in the filming of the Brave Star feature, or the production of the Brave Star feature, they assigned me the job of shooting and directing the rotoscope that was the live-action reference for the animation, for the stock package to be used first in the feature and then subsequently in the series. So we went out to Ventura, got a studio, and shot an actor and an actress going through various poses that we knew we could use for stock. And that got me familiar with what they were about. And I also was able to go, okay, well, this is a Western, so I do need the down shot to look at the two guys walking at each other. That's going to figure in many, many episodes because people they don't do gun battles in Brave Star, but there's the face down. The upshot of him marching, that's real important. You know, everything heroic, I was trying to think like that, like anything that was an upshot, pushing the angles a little bit more than the usual stock scene, because it felt like that was the stuff of heroes to me, and you want to get that little kind of a skewed angle on the hero. The task at hand in doing the Brave Star feature became how to get a lot of production value for the budget while doing something for that could be used in the series without being detected. And to that end, I decided that it would be good to put shadows on characters. Now back then, very few animated products had shadows on. If you looked at the Disney features from that point in time, they didn't do shadows. Shadows can be a real technical nightmare if you're not careful. But I thought, okay, if we just do this and we pick the sequences, I didn't do it in every one, but in certain sequences with lighting, like when Brave Star's talking to the shaman in his cave, or a night scene, adding shadows gave it a production value that just really pushed it to another level. But for the TV show, because shadows are a separate level, you don't have to shoot them, and they could use it, and so that was a quality concern for the feature. Where I thought we would get the most bang for our buck would be out of special effects, because I was looking at what was happening in the Japanese market and other animation studios around the world, and bottom light effects and really neat special effects were starting to come to the forefront. Also, Star Wars had been out, and everything. The stakes were just getting higher. So we happened to have a terrific effects crew headed by Brett Heisey and all kinds of guys that went on to all the major studio films in the 90s. And it was an endless process of making it better, trying something else. There was never, look, it's fine, just an airbrush cycle. People really wanted to try something. They would be excited. They'd come with wedge tests. They'd show you all this thing. I like to think an environment was formed during the making of the Brave Star feature where people were really excited about working on a feature film. And this was a chance for guys that were in TV to try to do something, to show what they could do. After all these years, they could grow a little bit. And so it became that friendly competition thing I like to talk about, where somebody would see what somebody else was doing, and then they'd try to do better. And the next guy tried to do better, and then people became interested in each other's artwork. And once you start that, it's like any learning curve. Everybody gets better and better and better, and I think that film really benefited from that. Without question, my favorite character in Brave Star would have to be 3030. I really liked the character of the horse. I liked the voice. I liked the fact that he could change from a mechanical horse into this humanoid kind of figure. Everything about it was fun to me. I liked the relationship between the hero and his steed. Being a dog lover, you wish your pet could talk to you. And it just was really neat. And it had that, Bob Forward had a way of bringing a certain level of reality and a pseudo grit to these kinds of stories, and it really played off. Everybody says Bob Forward, who was one of the writers, was like Brave Star. I always thought he was 3030. That's who it felt like to me. And he had good lines, drawing him was fun, animating him was fun, the relationship was fun. Everything about that was what I really looked forward to on the feature. And I thought the sequence where they meet was probably the best sequence in the movie. It got to do the mood, got to do everything we've been talking about with shadows and environments and pacing and action and comedy and drama and male bonding. Everything that goes into making a good little piece was in that sequence. Having worked on a lot of cartoons through the years, Tex Hex remains one of my favorite villains. I really like the voice that I believe Charlie Adler did. But also, he could do that. He was basically a skeleton, so he could do the Skeletor thing of somebody's jaw moving back and forth. You could exaggerate it. He had these big eyes. He was so full of himself and just so wicked that you could take him down a peg, and it was real easy to do. But he had all the classic markings of a Western villain, with the long droopy mustache and the long scraggly hair and the beaten hat and everything. I really thought he was a terrific character, and I would often try to emphasize his villainy in the feature by putting him in shadow without putting any shadows on his eyes. And that kind of gave a real eerie feeling of like glowing eyes, but not really. We weren't bottom-lining. It just kind of became intense somehow, so it was really fun to fool with the character like that. Looking at my career as a whole, I would have to say Brave Star was a very satisfying experience, and I think it came out far better than I had any reason to expect that it should, just given my own limitations as a director or whatever. I'm really proud of it. I think it's undervalued. I really believe the Brave Star feature is a genuinely entertaining movie. I know when we showed it to the whole crew, Lou rented a theater nearby. Everybody seemed to love it. It was fun. It was something that everybody was so proud of working on, and the story worked. It felt like a film. It didn't feel like something that was a TV show that kind of made it to film. We really, I believe, pulled it off, and this is credit to the crew, pulled off something that met the entertainment standards of what it should be. It's thrilling to think that the Brave Star movie DVD is coming out, because it gives an audience a chance to find something that's been kind of lost out there as far as animation history. It was a show that came out towards the end of filmation. All the stakes were changing in animation. Direction was paid everywhere, so it couldn't have the hit that it should have been. And the feature had a lot to it for a young audience. It had a very scary villain. He was very dark, much more menacing than you expect. He'd be drooling. The hero was a really cool-looking hero. If I were a young boy, it'd be the kind of hero I would want to draw. The women were very pretty. They had very rounded personalities. You know, there was a real relationship in the film between JB and Brave Star. It had a message to show about discrimination. That's really a good thing that is almost totally lacking in all aspects of children's film these days. And so it's a really worthwhile project. You could see the beginnings of what became the renaissance of animation in the 90s, just for people that were working, that went on to other things. You can almost tell where they were going to go from there. So I think it's a very important film for that, and you can't underestimate the value in some intrinsic way of that it being the last film of that kind to be animated, painted, everything totally done in this country. It simply is no more, and probably couldn't happen anymore. If somebody came to me and gave me $1 million an episode right today and said, tell you what, if you can turn out a show a week and animate it here and use all Americans, I'll give you $1 million. I'd have to say I can't do that because the labor pool is simply gone. And that was kind of a nice hurrah for all that, a final hurrah. Everybody got a chance to work on it. They did really good work. The film came out well. It was a good subject matter, had everything going for it. So I think it deserves an audience that hopefully this DVD helps it find.
And faraway place, the planet of New Texas floats deep in space. Sky of 3 suns, land of precious ore. The carrion rush brought outlaws by the score. And one day a lawman appeared, with powers of Pop, Wolf, Puma, and Bear. Protector of peace, mystic man from afar. Champion of justice, Marshal Brave Star. Brave Star.